Good day. The early 2000s was the absolute golden age of gaming. Back then, the developers had the tools, and they had the talent, and they had the freedom to allow their imaginations to run wild. If a game did not reach transcendence, it was often mocked and belittled. And one such mocked and belittled game was Predator: Concrete Jungle.
Predator: Concrete Jungle was developed by Eurocom and published by Vivendi Universal Games on the PS2 and Xbox Original in April of 2005. Almost 20 years ago now. I first heard about this game by going on the internet, and I went to a Predator fan site that had a bit of praise for this game. You see, today that's fairly common, but back in the dial-up days, that was still kinda special. Upon learning of the game's existence, I rushed to the local game shop to buy it, only to be told that it was crap, and that it was filled to the brim with invisible pimps and hookers. Crestfallen, I thought of getting another game, Advent Rising, but my love of the Predator franchise won out that day, and I bought it for the original Xbox. I took it home and found out, much to my pleasant surprise, that the game had neither invisible pimps or hookers. Instead, there were invisible voodoo gang members, and while there were hookers in this game, they wore power armor. The foul words from the game shop employee were simply just filthy lies. For what lies within the greatness of Predator: Concrete Jungle is a game that presaged the greatness of Assassin's Creed and Crackdown. While I originally played the game on the original Xbox, the footage we'll be seeing in this review came from the PlayStation 2. Some of the footage will be taken directly from the game running on my old PS2 Fat, but most of it will be from an early version of PCSX2. Predator: Concrete Jungle is a third-person hack-and-slash game that I feel had to have inspired the later Assassin's Creed games a little bit, as the gameplay in this game is remarkably similar to that game. You control a yachtja named Scarface. First you get the skulls, then you get the powder, then you get the muscle mummies. He is a member of the prestigious Dark Blade clan, and is what we in the current year of 2024 would call either a Giga Chad or a high-value yachtja. He's about 11 feet tall, and has multiple high-value trophies on his wall, and likely gets together with many muscle mummies. For non-Predator fans, the Predator females are larger and more muscular than the male Preds, hence me calling them muscle mummies. Get culture, plebeians! Now, Gigapred here didn't start at the top of the heap. Oh no! When the game starts, you gotta come straight from the dirt and earn all your high-tech gear and kick-ass badassery. The game story is a redemption arc for Scarface. When the game starts, he dishonors himself and has to atone for his misdeeds. When you start the game, you have low-level weapons and armor and are at a major disadvantage when compared to the enemies. As you play the game, you will need to complete hidden objectives to unlock better weapons and armor. This game ain't gonna be easy, cause this game is from the golden era of gaming. The enemies are tough and numerous, and you have to be smart to survive. The game allows you to become the Predator, and that is no exaggeration either. All the cool tools and gadgets from Predator 1 and 2 and, AVP 1 the movie make an appearance, and you use them all throughout the game. And it's amazing how well integrated these gadgets are. There's some parkour, but it's not nearly as polished as what we'd see in the later Assassin's Creed games. But hey, it was 2005 and you gotta start somewhere. And while the parkour is kind of stiff in places, it's playable, and it won't annoy the player too much. You got two types of jumps, standard and super, and the super jump will allow you to bridge huge gaps and climb up buildings. Combat has a stealth focus, but that just means you gotta use that cloaking device like always. The game is set in the distant future of 2030. One of the ways that Scarface dishonored himself was by dropping some of its hunting gear, and humans ended up reverse engineering it. And due to this stolen technology, humanity in 2030 is much like it is now. A high-tech dystopia, but Predator: Concrete Jungle's high-tech dystopia is way cooler, because in that universe we got laser guns, cyborgs, and flying cars! And weebs that are actually remarkably dangerous. You gotta be careful when pushing it to the limit. Like in other games where you play as the Predator, you want to save your energy weapon for bosses and just stab the bastards with your blades of great justice. When engaging in combat, you could just walk up to an enemy and start bashing them about the head and shoulders, or you could use the dedicated lock-on mechanic. For basic trash mobs, you won't really need it, but for bosses, it's essential. You got 4 stabby weapons: wrist blades, combi stick, glaive, and finally, maul. And yes, you can bisect people with it. Each weapon will be useful in some way, and each will have their own combos and special moves. Then you got your ranged weapons. You got the plasma caster, the spear gun, and the smart disc. The plasma caster has charge up time and is a pretty good boss killer. The spear gun is very important. It is your silenced sniper rifle, and it's very good for taking down enemies that have gutty laser vision. The smart disc allows you to target multiple enemies, but I honestly never used it that much. The final weapon you got are mines, and these mines can be used to set traps, but I never really used them for that. I mainly just used them as short-range hand grenades. Each weapon can be upgraded by completing a certain hidden objective found in the game. As you go through the game, these weapons start fairly modest, but then get extremely bloody powerful, and they get a corresponding new model that will show up on the Predator. And of course, the Dark Blade variants are the coolest of them all. Dark Blade privilege! Like in any normal Predator game, you have multiple vision modes. You have normal human vision, heat vision, electrical vision, and finally PredTech vision. In this early version of PCSX2, we got a graphical glitch in PredTech vision, but later versions do not have this. When you scan enemies with each vision mode, you learn more about them and get some fun lore. The game is not open world, but instead features large game spaces where you complete objectives. Some of these objectives can be completed non-linearly, and some have a strict time limit. If you are an Ass Creed fan, you are really going to notice the similarities here. Each area that you play in will have a few different variations you have to complete, and then at the end, you fight a boss. And the boss battles in this game are really bloody good, like Dark Soulsian levels of good, and you better believe you gotta get good, son. You have non-regenerative health and energy. You heal by using healing charges, and you can hold up to 3 at a time, and you refill them by searching the game world. Be careful though, because when they're gone, they are bloody well gone. Energy is easier to come by, you just gotta look for electrical boxes. The game has a lot of heart put into it, and you know these devs loved the Predator movies. You can unlock, via gameplay challenges, all the costumes from the movies that were released at that time. Although I gotta tell you, the ultimate Dark Blade Clan costume is my personal favorite. The best part is that the costumes you actually want to wear are the easiest to get. The Jungle Hunter costume is unlocked first, and all you gotta do is kill a super easy to find guy. And in this video, we will see Scarface in the Jungle Hunter and City Hunter costumes. I am so glad this game came out in 2005, as there was no such thing as on-disc DLC or paid cosmetics. The game uses the checkpoint saving system, at least on the original consoles. The checkpoints are the most annoying part of this game. Predator Concrete Jungle is really bloody hard, like diamond hard in some places. Until you trigger a checkpoint, you go back. And sometimes you could lose 20 or 30 minutes of gameplay and have to sit through an unskippable cutscene. Thankfully, we got save states with PCSX2, so all the controllers can remain intact. So yeah, not exactly just a trash game with invisible pimps and hookers. All of this gameplay works, and not one bit of it is hampered by jank. If you have never given this game a playthrough, you've really been missing out, as not only is this an amazing Predator game, it's a fun-ass game in its own right. Graphically, this game looks pretty great for '05. Having played both versions, I gotta say they are virtually identical to each other. The Predator looks amazing, although he's a little low res, and all the textures in the game are pretty limited, and people's hands are weird mutant flippers, but still the devs gave it their all, and the game still looks passable, even today. Sound is amazing. They got all the Predator sounds just right. The VA work, while nothing to write home about, is boosted by great writing. The music is pretty okay, although you're not really gonna be rocking out to it in the car. Menus for the game show that AVP2 styled polish. The main menu has Scarface on the clock tower, just like the City Hunter in Predator 2. Even better, you get to see Scarface's trophy wall, and you get some lore when you look at a skull. These guys knew their stuff. Better yet, we even have a bloody level select. A fan mentioned that some games lack such a feature due to not being able to work with upgrade paths and the like. I get that, but thankfully in this game, while you do have upgrade paths, they are applied to all the levels, so you can go back to level 1 with all your high-tech shit. Controls for the game are excellent. The devs made sure everything was laid out sensibly, and both Xbox and PS2 controls work great. And they'd bloody better since this game is really difficult, and bad controls would have made this game bloody well unplayable. story for the game is nothing short of exceptional. It truly lets you become the Predator and do all the Predator things, but it does not rehash the first or second movies and gives Scarface a compelling narrative without taking away his loud kind of mysterious. It gives both kinds of Predator fans what they want. For the boring fan, it doesn't give away too much of the mystery of the Predator. For the cool dude like me, we get lore and we have the Predator be a central character in his own game. The story was written by comic book writer Grant Morrison, and it shows. This story is less of a movie or TV show, but it is instead like that of a comic book series. This is probably the second best Predator narrative, second only to the original AVP comic itself. Predator Concrete Jungle is set in its own continuity and has nothing to do with the comic of the same name. What this game tries to do is tie Alien and Predator media together into a coherent whole, and it mostly works. For boring fans, Scarface does not talk in the game, but he will communicate like the Predators in the films via voice clips, and these voice clips are pretty effective. Although I gotta say, in 2024, they're a little less cool due to Transformers ripping them off and giving them to Bumblebee. Ugh. Anyway, so the story begins back in 1930 in the fictional New Way City. I guess this is the way. Anyway, the story begins in media res, and as you play the game, more and more details of this badass opener get revealed. The game starts up with some narration about the Predator, and then you get right into the gameplay. In this game, you play as Scarface, and you have been wounded, and you gotta get to the ship. All the while, New Way City tears itself apart. Be sure to take part in this Summer of Love and show Broken Face Finlay a good time to unlock the iconic Jungle Hunter skin. Even better, you skin him out and then hang him from a clock tower like the Bloody City Hunter in Predator 2. Scarface doesn't make it back to the ship and instead gets blown up, falls through a hole, and thinking he's gonna get captured, he blows up his ship, a ship that is in the middle of a city. Kind of convenient he didn't blow himself up with his wrist nuke, but if he had, we wouldn't have this game, now would we? Or it'd be really short. I hope this doesn't give EA any ideas. The ship blows up and takes out Not York City. This would kill millions of people and would expose the Predators forever, because in 1930, the very idea of nuclear fission or fusion was still in its infancy, and not a single country in the world would have been able to cause this much destruction. So, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. And if this universe didn't have a Great Depression, it sure will now. The more you think about it, this would be the defining event of the 20th century. And due to this, it makes any silliness from the cyberpunk era you play in justified, as this is a pretty huge point of diversion. So, Scarface, he's got to be channeling a little rowboat girly man, because he survives a ground zero atomic blast and then gets picked up by his Predator buddies. He submits himself for punishment and goes into exile. He is left on an alien world for 100 years with nothing but a glaive. And no, these are not xenomorphs. These are creatures that look kind of like a xenomorph. I gotta tell you though, I don't really see this as a punishment, more like, punishment. So, in the far-off future of 2030, Scarface has to go back to work after 100 years of goofing off. When Scarface was escaping the Summer of Love, he dropped a few things, and Not Vandal Savage has been using reverse-engineered weapons to kill off a bunch of Predator hunting parties. Giga Chad the Predator gets charged with taking down Vandal Savage and restoring his lost honor. In the distant far-off days of 2030, we got a full cyberpunk dystopia built atop the blasted ruins of New Way City, now called Neonopolis, City of Light. Get screwed, Paris! What we got here is a city that would have seemed unrealistic in 2005, but is now all too real. Massive income inequality, with the poor and middle class living in squalor. Rampant drug use, and gangs warring for supremacy. And at some point, the police were defunded and disbanded, as there are whole zones that are unpoliced. And onto this! The Predator Scarface has come. He is not the hero we need, but the hero we deserve. Okay, he ain't no hero, but seeing as how Gandalf Gavage runs the city by controlling the flow of what is called Prometheus tech, aka phaser guns, reverse engineered from PredTech, the normally neutral evil Predator gets pushed into nominally neutral good. As he is taking down Nanda Navage, he is giving the city a new tomorrow and hope for a safer world. Not that Scarface gives a damn, he's just in it for himself and he's having a good time doing it. So you start from the bottom and work your way up to the big kahuna. You start out by taking a voodoo gang, which is a direct reference to Predator 2. You know, for a movie that gets a lot of flack, the devs sure loved it, and while it's not a perfect sequel, it's still a badass movie all the same, although that bloody surprise sex scene makes it a bit awkward to watch. Anyway, these are the invisible gang members I mentioned earlier, and they're pretty easy to take down. One of the enemies you end up fighting are the riot police. They use what are effectively 40k style dreadnoughts as heavies. Now, they can either be easy to take down or a bloody chore. All you gotta do is get behind him and then press a button, and Scarface does the rest. And it's a pretty kick-ass animation. Now, it's easy to miss the instruction on how to slay these foul abominations, and so you might think you gotta fight them, or hit them with your plasma caster, or use your mines. I managed to take down all the dreadnoughts with a crap ton of mines and plasma shots. It took ages and a crap ton of tries, but I did it. Hell, I thought the game was bugged due to how hard this was. Little did I know I was being a tryhard. So yeah, just do the context-sensitive button press and get your green ass moving. What's really cool is how impressive these early missions are. They're not open world, but the game spaces were huge for 2005, and they really let you feel what it's like to be the Predator. The end-level boss is King Willie's descendant. He is hard and has a big-ass knife and a whole bunch of health. When you scan him, you are told outright that he has magical powers. I'm gonna do a magic trick. I'm gonna make these wrist blades disappear. When fighting any boss, you need to target him first and do the Dark Souls thing and dodge his attacks, otherwise you're going to get turned into a fine green paste. King Willie III is a good introductory boss fight, and he definitely sets the tone for the boss fights to come. Next, you go down amongst the dead men and take down some druggies. Dare to stay drug-free, or else. You gotta stealth around, and the enemies are a little better armed. You later crash a Grateful Dead concert and take down 3 cyborg bastards. As you play the game, each boss fight will get progressively harder and harder. Never unfair, but never easy either. Next, it's time to take down Marlon Brando. Yes, really, you take down the mob. You hitch a ride to Mob Island with some Antifa dumbasses. This mission is not quite as impressive as the mini open world stuff you just completed, as this level is much more constrained and you gotta be really stealthy. After you tell Don Corleone that you don't care for the Godfather, we are finally done with the small fry and start in on the main course. You next get introduced to a minor villain named El Hongo. He is taking over the territory of the gangs you just wiped out. You wipe out his stuff in a fairly stealth-focused mission. Next, you get introduced to Lucrezia Borgia. We start to learn just how the world of 2030 works, aka how the real world works. Where is Scarface when you need him? Through Miss Borgia, Mr. Perez has been taking over the territory you have been denuding with your slashy antics. And now, Lucrezia wants Hongo to do the easy thing and take down the Batman, or Predator Man. Well, Scarface just goes on and kills all of El Hongo's pimps and bosses. Funny part here is that from this point forward, we will keep cutting back to Lucrezia as the Predator disrupts more and more of her criminal operations. She is one of the greater scope villains, but it's never shown if Scarface even knows this. The day that Scarface graced your shitty little city with his presence was the most important day of your life, but for him, it was Tuesday. So on Wednesday, Lucrezia calls in the glorious Mother Russians called the Machine Men. They are some cyborgs and they will give you a good fight, and their leader has a really damaging ground pound attack. But you show them how you got those scars and move on. One question I got though, once you defeat the Machine Men, we cut back to Lucrezia and she says that she wants to walk away from Neonopolis, and I'm like, where is she gonna go? Why would she go? She is largely the most powerful person in what is, in theory, the richest city in the world due to all the alien tech. The game never really explains why she wants to leave all that power behind, especially since she's a psycho. I mean, what is she gonna do? Go to Portland? Yeah, seems legit. Now, you gotta face some ex-porn star hookers. This is my kind of game. Alas, none are muscle mommies, so Scarface is not impressed. These missions are a bit rough, giggity, cause they know how to show Scarface a good time. You gotta be stealthy, cause watch out boy, those girls will chew you up. You blow their boat full of plasma cells and take down their active camo. Turns out these sexy babes were power-armored muscle mommies the entire time. Eventually, Scarface gives El Hongo some sloppy seconds. And lastly, we get the coldest moment in the entire game. Oh, how I miss the early 2000s. Lucrezia runs to her father and calls you a xenopredator. I guess that's mostly right, and says that you are on the prowl. Her father decides to step in to try and take that little upstart Scarface down. So, Indianapolis, the advanced tech is controlled by the Borgia Corporation. And yes, this is a direct reference to the famous Borgia family from Renaissance Italy. Back in 2005 and later 2010 when I first reviewed this game, this went right over my head as I never really studied Italian politics. As back in those days, I was much more interested in early US politics. It's so cool that devs back then would put little details in the games that only really nerdy people would get. So now you start directly taking on the Borgias, and pretty much all the remaining missions will be rock hard, as enemies will now be better armed and armored with high-tech gear. And now those 3 healing charges can and will go fast. You blow up a teapot and then face some cyber psychos. The quick save key is gonna get a workout. This level ends pretty epically. The Borgias send an entire army of cyber psychos after you, and Scarface just says, "Come get some." You get captured by Borgie Boy, and despite this being a game from 2005, the graphics are good enough to have some subtle details you might miss. Borgie has some scaly skin and talon-tipped fingernails. What could he be doing? He says that his father, Bruno Borgia from 1930, left him the tech and the city. Not only that, but Borgie mentions a mother. We then get some flashback levels set in 1930, and these feature Scarface taking on Bruno Borgia, the god of gangsters. He orders the chief of the corrupt police to, well, do his job and take down the gangs. But only the gangs opposed to Bruni, of course. This explains the Summer of Love from the first level. One thing you need to remember to do in this level is to take down a bunch of mob snipers to snag you the AVP1 movie costume. While that movie might have been crap, that costume was pretty sweet. Then you fight King Bastard the First himself. He's got a big ass axe and a magical shield. This shield can and will block all of your attacks. Yes, this wooden shield can block a plasma cannon. When you finally take him down, he rants at you and says he will call down upon you the curse of Borgia. Can he do that? Because I don't think he can do that. Then Scarface makes himself into kind of a creeper. For some reason that is never really explained, he brings Bruno's severed head to show off to Bruno's pregnant wife. Did Scarface want to, push it to the limit with her or something? Yeah, anyway, Isabella Borgia shoots Scarface in the eye, and can't blame her. And she and Bruno Jr. get splashed with some Predator blood. Thankfully, that's all she gets splashed with. And to make matters worse, Scarface drops some gear and leaves. A lot of that doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't know why Scarface is creeping like that. Anyway, moving on. We then cut back to 2030, and the narrator now has the hots for Scarface. What the hell, people? When did this become someone's fat fantasy? Ew. Anyway, Scarface has got to break out of jail after getting convicted of being a sex pest. The narrator needs to be sent there too. They're both totally going on the registry. This is a rock-hard, giggity part of the game, as Scarface has only his wrist blades and 10 health. Even with save states, it's hard, and the first healing charge will finally let you breathe again. Eventually, you rescue some Predator buddies, but then they will sadly buy it, and eventually you will escape. We then cut to Lucrezia talking to the mother computer system. And we learn that Nandrel Navage is actually named Hunter. A bit on the nose there, Mr. Morrison. So, we are finally in Cyberpunk land now, and these are the hardest goddamn levels in the entire game. For most of the game, you will have your cloaking device on, but now the game brings the rain and the pain, and you are revealed for all the world to see. And now you face not only plasma rifle armed corporate troops, but also predators that have had their brains replaced with computers. These are tough bosses, but not as tough as the big chap Predator. You fight him twice, and each battle hurts. When you finally take down the cyberized Predators, Lucrezia sends in the dirtiest, the nastiest, the most disgusting troops she can think of. She sends in the Weebs! Not the Weebs! Ah, my eyes! Moving on, you gotta fight some cyborg Weebs with super advanced katanas made of glorious Nippon steel fielded 20,000 times! So, the level 10,000 Ways to Die is the hardest level in the entire bloody game. You will probably die that many times, as will your controller. It's doable, and I was able to beat it without save states a bunch of times on the old Xbox. Now, the weebs are the least of your challenges, although they are tough mini-bosses. Instead, you have a bunch of crunchies with magnum rifles and guided missile lawn chairs that will turn you into guacamole paste in short order. You think Dark Souls is hard? Ha! Try this legit! The final boss fight is with a bunch of weebs, and next you clear out some labs, and after the hell of 10,000 ways to die, it's almost easy. Then you fight through a holodeck recreation of the 1930s, and fight yet more cyber psychos, and finally take down the big chap. What you want to do for this guy is you want to dart in and hit him till he dies. This is when you finally learn the big secret. Isabella Borgia at some point was turned into a prototype for the mother AI computer that was seen in Alien. And she was the narrator the entire time. Ew. And that's when this game becomes the most awesome thing ever. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is a bit of a prequel to the Aliens films. Because Isabella, after basically telling you that she's a creepy, sicks some xenomorphs on you.
Hello, Scarface. Long time no see. I suppose you think you've got me just where you want me now, but say hello to my little friends.
But yes, ladies and gentlemen, honored fans and watchers, we get to fight xenomorphs. The game does not foreshadow this at all. There is a mention of Wayland and Yutani, and you can get that AVP costume, but the game does not give anything away, and there was never really any expectation that fucking xenomorphs would show up. This is truly one of the great surprises in gaming, on par with the Flood in Halo 1. This mission is pretty tough, but not nearly as hard as that bloody 10,000 ways to die. You can fight the Xenos, but they come in huge numbers, so discretion is the better part of valor. Sadly, we do not get an Alien Queen boss fight, and I wonder if technical limitations played a role in that. Finally, you penetrate Isabella, and she is extra creepy. Final boss fight is with mutated Hunter Borgia. It's a badass fight, and Scarface even gets the weebs to fight alongside him in the name of anime. The fight ends on the Borgia statue, and you walk along that razor's edge and push it to the limit. Once you defeat Hunter, you taunt him with his evil mother's words that he was weak until you, the Yautja, made him strong. You then take his skull and leave his body draped over his statue with his blood, giving the audience a visual reminder that behind the villain was the Predator. Finally, Scarface gets to the ship, cracks open a 6-pack of beer, and toasts to one hell of a weekend. Invisible pimps and hookers, eh? Imagine writing a story that complex and good, and imagine getting the gameplay as tight as possible to the point where you can platform on a statue, and that's what some Game Shop rando says about your game. This is a game that is extremely underrated and deserves much more respect than it gets. It nailed what a Predator game was supposed to be and gave us the greatest solo Predator game of what is likely to be for all time. There is a post-credit scene where we find out that Lucrezia has since been turned into a mother computer and that Wayland and Yutani have merged and are looking at the system with great interest. We got a cool cyberpunk horror explanation for how that AI was created, and we fully tie in the Predator and Alien universes without losing the mystery of both. Notice that Predator Concrete Jungle paid homage to the past. It celebrated the past, but it did not rely upon the past. It built upon what had come before and gave us a new Predator experience and built upon the universe that it was based upon. This game is an example of a time when imagination, not imitation, was the order of the day.
If, like me, you have not played this game since way back in 2010, it's time to boot it back up and find out that there are indeed 10,000 ways to die. And so, I am General Lotz, wishing you good, no one lives forever, and good AVP2, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.